Hi, this is Dr. Scott, and today we're going to get into a new series. I don't know how many videos we're going to do of this, but we'll just see where we go with this. So, this is going to be End the Fed, the beginning. So, Dan Scavino put out uh, just a meme, and he said on there, abolish the Fed, or abolish the IRS. And I put it out there on Twitter, and kind of got a lot of statements on there because I said this about 5 years ago. We're going to abolish. I said, hey, listen, man, I've been talking about this for a very long time that we need to abolish the IRS. But guess what? I've been talking about end the Fed. Now, to a whole bunch of other people's credit, for instance, Judy Shelton has been talking about this for literally 25 to 35 years. There's a whole bunch of other people. Senator Paul has been getting on this topic, but what I've been talking about this is a really specific way of handling this. One of the interesting people who talks about ending the Fed is a real interesting Edward G. Griffith, who wrote Creature from Jekyll Island, and I remember having just a very short conversation with him on an email, and I said, we're gonna see a going back to a go back currency, and he goes, I don't think it will happen, and I was like, dude, calm down, it's gonna happen. The reality is, when we see this thing happening, the whole system collapses. And I'm going to show you a couple videos because we're seeing Tucker Carlson really push the envelope on a lot of these areas here. So we're going to, first off, I'm going to show you a little thing on just an interesting part here. So let's just show you this little thing here. Oh, sorry, I'm making it a little bit bigger because it's so hard to see if you don't see it. Oops, sorry. So this is just a site, and it's an IDN financials. So since 1915, the Fed saw, and this is 2025, the Fed saw $192 billion losses. And they're showing the bank losses since 2020 or 2000. So I want you to think about this for a second. So they're in the green even through the banking crisis of 2009. When you and I were getting screwed through 2009, they weren't losing money. Now think about that for a second. You and I were dying on the vine. Many people lost their homes through this time frame. I mean, I was just going through some severe time frames from my business standpoint. I mean, I was 90% debt to income. I mean, I was sitting on the edge of bankruptcy, business bankruptcy mostly, that would have flipped over into personal bankruptcy, right? And so many of us were just dying. And think about this, the dot-com industry, they were right on the edge here, and they were really close. And I'm gonna show you other things that will show you how bad they were. But think about this, they were in better shape in this time frame. But what happens in 2020, they should have been in a really bad shape, and yet they were in good shape. What happens in 2022 to 2023? They're in horrible shape. And I mean, disgusting, off the chart shape. And when you go back in history, you've never seen this before. And I keep saying, people go, they're just going to keep going the same way. They're just going to keep borrowing. They can't borrow to get themselves out of this position. There's no way to fix themselves out of this position. They're in such ugly shape. Something's got to change. Okay? So let's show you this video because this is powerful stuff.
Particularly the central banks, because they have the
bigger the bank, the more the power, but their power extends beyond just like their relations with other banks. Their power determines a lot of what happens in your country.
Yeah.
and they're not under the control of voters, right? So it's an extra democratic institution, which happens to be the most powerful, which is like crazy. I'd love to know how that happened, but how do they feel about war?
Well, central banking and warfare are very closely linked. As I said, I mean, the modern major bank, the first modern major bank and central bank was the Bank of England, of course. And in the very act of parliament, the law founding it, it says this institution and mechanism, because they didn't want resistance. They don't mention Bank of England. What we're doing here is establishing the Bank of England. They kept that secret. We're doing a new mechanism by these investors to raise and lend a lot of money to the government, namely by establishing a company. Will be allowed to establish a company, that's the Bank of England, in order for what? In order to wage war. It was in order to make war. So they're closely linked. And of course, if you look
In
at
its founding document, it says that.
in exactly the Act of Parliament establishing the Bank of England, it said the purpose is to make war.
You see, when you understand and you go back in time in 1913 in the beginning of the Fed, now see the Bank of England, the central banks had been around for literally from 1913. They had been around since the 1600s. So it's not a new thing. We had been fighting it. The Aldrich Act, Senator Aldrich had been pushing the envelope for a very, very long time. And he had been pushing the central bank. And America had been saying, oh, no, we're not going to do that. So what they had done at the time frame, and many of, if you've heard me talk about this, I brought this up several times, but in that time frame, we had said, no, we're not going to do this. But 1913, they pushed forward, and Edward Griffin did a beautiful conversation about how they went to the island and said, we're going to come up with the Federal Reserve. So they brought on their candidate of Woodrow Wilson to pass the Federal Reserve. It was timed exactly with the Titanic, the sinking of the Titanic. People who did not want a central bank, the Federal Reserve Act in 1912, they took down that particular Titanic to bring on this ugly situation. So in 1913, you have the Federal Reserve Act, you have the IRS, you have all kinds of other things that come on in that circumstance. So these are some of the things, but it precedes an issue that also happens. Let me show you a little bit about this one.
The bank panic of 1907 was a significant financial crisis in the United States, marked by widespread bank runs and failures that led to a severe liquidity crisis. In the years leading up to the panic, rapid industrial growth fueled rampant speculation in various assets, particularly in the copper market. As the U.S. economy began to slow and fears of a recession grew, the banking environment became increasingly fragile. In October 1907, rumors about the financial instability of the Knickerbocker Trust Company, one of New York's largest trust companies, triggered panic among depositors, leading to mass withdrawals. Many banks struggled to meet these demands, resulting in further bank runs. In response, financier J.P. Morgan intervened to restore confidence by organizing a consortium of bankers to provide liquidity to struggling banks and facilitate the merger of weakened institutions.
You see, J.P. Morgan, part owner or significant owner of the Titanic, creates this crisis. He is part of the significant portion of the crisis, which he sinks the Titanic, brings about the whole crisis issue. This is the sickness of the system. But we go back a little bit further, and we see this. This is, and you're going, these things don't seem like they're connected. The 13th Amendment that passes in I want to say 1863, if I remember right. 100% of it was supported by the Republicans. 23% of it was supported by the Democrats because it abolishes slavery. 1864, uh, after the after Lincoln's killed, right? 1860, 18 let's see here, 1867, if I remember right. This freed the the citizenship of freed slaves. Now, there's way more to this act. This actually has slavery of debt issues. It has it deals with whole bunch of different things of slavery of debt, slavery to the systems. It has election law issues. I spend a ton of time on this 1867. And then we also have later on the right to vote that happens in the early 19th century, 20th century. And now this is a Republican kind of thing. But these things were also set up, and this was the pushback of our systems with that too. So this is a pushback, but yet it wasn't exactly in the system. It wasn't exactly something great that people looked at. Now, I want to kind of bring you forward in this circumstance, because what we're dealing with right now is the unrealized losses. The systems are starting to die because everything has a time of death. The death of the banking systems are starting to die, and now we're seeing it in 2020. From 2020 on, from 2022 on, just like I showed you in that's the system, the banking losses are unrecoverable. The banking losses, there's no way for the Federal Reserve to print more money. And people, this is one of the things that I keep saying to people. Whether you brought it up in different ways, there's no way for them just to print more money and to fix the losses. No matter what they're due, they could print up more and more money. You could say, this is why people don't get it when I talk about this. The central banking systems. And by the way, what happened in 2022? And you go, wait, what happened? Well, that's the same basic time frame that we have the war in Ukraine. Okay. But same basic time frame that we also have the war, the Gaza and the Israeli war. Interesting. Banking war. So they tried to create another war situation so that they could create money, right? Was it working? Was it working? Did it make a difference to their bottom line? See, if all wars are banker wars, did it make a difference? Did it bring money in their coffers? If you heard that conversation with the central banker wars, did it make a difference? And the answer is no. So something's changing in the water, right? If those banker wars haven't been fixing things, something's in the works. And I'm telling you, the people who are telling you that this is never going to happen, I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time before we are on the realm of a gold-backed currency. And I know you're sitting here, and today is August 10th, and you'll probably see this sometime around August 15th or so. But here's the reality. We have a very short period of time before this thing flips. It will flip. There's no question about will it flip or will it not flip. It absolutely has to flip because they've done every single little thing to make it flip. There's to flip for their better favor. See, people are sitting out there trying to tell you that central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are their way of fixing it. Trump has already signed a CBDC, an anti-CBDC. Nope, they're not going to be able to do it. The Great Reset, nope, it's not going to work. Every little thing that they've tried to do, they lose. They lose. We are turning all of the tables. Even the 14th Amendment is going to be used against them in every way. They continue to lose, and you just have to hold on. You have to hold on for dear life. And I know it's struggle. I understand the struggle more than you realize because every day I hear your struggles. And yet you have to go to the Lord every morning and say, God, I don't know how I'm going to hold on. That's faith. When only thing you have left is Him, hold on. It's coming.